Hi, welcome to Nav School Lesson 3. Lesson 3 is free navigation, which is when you plan a route in the air rather than planning it on the ground. It's fantastic for airmanship, but if you want to cut a route short, or if you're going a longer distance and you're trying to keep an idea of your timing and you want to adjust it in the air. Let's go! So for free navigation, the important bits of information that we need: a distance, so there's a distance between your waypoints. We haven't measured it before we've got airborne, so I've got a scale drawn on the side of my pen, which allows me to measure the distances. We also need to know what our ground speed is. Without GPS, we basically know what our wind speed is, and then we take the wind into account. And then we need to do a calculation, so it's fairly straightforward. Speed equals distance divided by time. Time is distance divided by speed. So I'll take you through those sums as we go along.
So let's go through some of those planning considerations now. You remember from lesson 1 how we worked out our wing speed. For me, I'm going to use the same figure as before, which is 51. And we also remember how we've worked out what the wind at height was going to be. Today the wind's 190 at 10 knots, which is around about 18.5 kilometers an hour, so I'm going to call that 19. So that gives me a maximum ground speed of 70 kilometers an hour with a tailwind, so that's when I'm heading north, and a minimum ground speed of 32 kilometers an hour when I've got my total headwind, and that's when I'm heading south. The calculation that we need for today is time is distance divided by ground speed. So we estimate our ground speed bearing in mind the heading that we're on, and then we can work out the time based on the distance. So coming over the top at the start point now, that's I've got the road off on the right hand side, which is dissecting the wood, and then looking ahead of me I've got the two small woods just this side of a very much larger wood. So that's lining up nicely as a good start line, good nav features to be heading for, to draw in a virtual nav line because I don't have one on the map. So start the stopwatch now as we go over the start point. Now I'm looking ahead, just eyeballing it. I can see that if I draw a line between my start point and my next turning point, it takes me roughly over the middle of that first wood and to the left hand side of that second wood, and then over the top of the next wood. So that's a good line feature I've got at the start, and that's the most important thing, starting off with sort of big, unique and directional features if you've got them, and making sure your stopwatch runs at the very start. Lining up your navigation, you're not going to miss your turning point if your navigation's on. Timing isn't a secondary factor, so we'll start to look at that in a moment. So timing wise, first thing we need to know is what the distance is. So I'm just going to measure now the distance between the start point and my next turning point. So I've got 3.3 kilometers roughly. We're going to use a ground speed, so we're mostly heading into wind. There's almost no crosswind on this. It's almost directly heading into wind as we're heading south. So I'm going to take all of the 19 kilometers an hour, which is going to give me a ground speed now of 32 kilometers an hour. So I'm going to put that into the equation. So that's 3.3 divided by 32 multiplied by 60. That gives me, that's just under 6.2. So I'm going to call that 6.2, which I'm going to round to 6 minutes and 10 seconds. And I'm going to write that down because I'm going to forget it otherwise. So I'm going to write that next to the turning point, 6 minutes and 10 seconds. Okay, so back into navigation. As I go over this tear-shaped wood, I'm looking ahead and I can now start to see the next wood. The shape of that is looking much more distinctive, and slightly beyond that actually, that's showing out quite nicely. So I can see a line feature at the end of the wood, and then beyond that and on the right hand side I can see another square-shaped wood. So I need to be to the left-hand side of that square-shaped wood, which is flying over that line feature. So that's my next feature. So that's my navigation now sorted out until I get a beam, that square-shaped wood on the right-hand side. Okay, so that's going to give me a good opportunity. I'm just going to do, just to show you, just going to do some interim timing. So this is all based on the start point, because that's where we started our stopwatch from. And I'm going to use this right-handed gap in the woods you can see just coming up in front of us now. So I'm just going to measure that from the start point to that bend in the woods. Okay, so I've got 2 kilometers from the start to this 90-degree bend in the wood. So 2 kilometers at 32 kilometers an hour multiplied by the 60 gives me 3.75 minutes. So 3 minutes 45 seconds I'm expecting to be at this bend in the wood. And when I get there, I'll know if I'm early or late, and it will let me know if I'm likely to be at my turning point early or late. So as we approach the wood, that's looking quite nice for timing. I'm looking ahead now to try to pick up the track that I'm looking for, and the track is where the building is going to be. So it's that small building, and there's also a building off to the right hand side of it, and I think I can start to see it showing up now, and I think, yeah, that is showing up nicely. So timing wise, we're expected to be over this corner of the wood at 3 minutes 45, so that's looking pretty much bang on. So we should be over the turning point around about 6 minutes 10, which is what we thought. So for navigation features, I've got the small wood on the right hand side. We need to be about 200 meters to the left of that, and then looking ahead I can see a track now starting to show up nicely, a sandy colour track, and at the end of that I can see some trees, and I can see what looks like the shadow of some trees and possibly a building in that, although it's still quite a way off yet. So we've got our nav features sorted out, we've got our timing sorted out, so I'm pretty confident now that we will be able to go over the top of that. And this is all based on us having no information about any of this before we started, other than what our wing speed was and what our wind direction and strength was. So just to beam the wood now, so looking ahead, yep, that is showing up quite nicely. In fact, I think that looks like a small runway in that field on the left hand side. Be interesting to see a bit closer. I'm just going to look around for any aircraft, can't see anything at the moment. So as we come in, right, so I can now start to see a building that is in the shadow of the tree, and then a runway just to this side of it going off to the left hand side. So that's all looking good. So as we come into this turning point, the next thing I need to do is to start looking for an exit line out. So looking at my map, I can see that I need to do a turn to the right hand side, and I'm going to pick up a bend in the road. I think I can see that already, and I can also see the woods beyond that I need to be turning towards. So I've got my exit line sorted out, and all I'm doing now is making sure I go over the top of this target direction, this turning point. And yeah, I can just about see a small aircraft down there as well, which is quite nice. So planned or expected to be here at 6 minutes and 10 seconds, so that's pretty much there now. We'll turn on now for our next turning point. I'm going to reset the stopwatch. Okay, so my stopwatch is running now. Now we're going to be heading off. So I've got a building off on the right hand side, which was the one I saw on the way in, and then I've got a small road, and it's got quite a distinctive bend in it. I can see some woods on mine, but they're not on the Ordnance Survey map, but I know pretty much where I am, and then beyond that I can see another small set of woods, but beyond that it does look a bit mixed. There aren't that many definable features out there, so I'm just going to take the heading I've got at the moment and then start to look ahead. Okay, so I've got a wooded hill on my right hand side, and I've got a village of Dinton on my left hand side. So initially I don't have many good features to aim for. I'm just going to aim roughly between those two and then identify some nav features a bit later on. And actually looking further ahead now, I can start to make out a square shaped wood. So it's the left hand side of the track that I'm currently on. It's a square shaped wood, and it comes down the side of that hill. So I know I need to be to the right of that, looking at my virtual line on the map. So I'm just going to aim off to there, and that's good enough to get me in towards the turning point, and I can do some more precise nav as I get closer to it. I'm just going to measure this distance. So this leg is, so that's 4.2 kilometers. We've turned away from the wind slightly, so I'm going to increase our ground speed to, let's call it 34 kilometers on this leg. So we'll do some sums. So it's 4.2 kilometers divided by 34 kilometers an hour, because we've still got the headwind element. That gives me 7.4, so I'm going to call that 7 minutes and 25 seconds. So I'm going to write that down. 7 minutes 25 seconds at the next turning point. So looking for some features, I've got the big wood going down my right hand side now. Those collection of yellow buildings on the left hand side seem to be on the map, so I'm content. I'm roughly where I need to be. There's a church should be going down my left hand side shortly. I can't see that at the moment, but I think I can make out this. There's a small cricket pitch by the looks of it, which ties in nicely with the road and the building. So I'm happy. I'm roughly where I want to be, and I've got a good idea of the time that I should be at my turning point. So now I've got time on my hands, I can have a look around and make sure I'm not going to fly into anyone else. Okay, so now I'm showing just on my left hand side, and then going across my track I've got a railway. So railways show up brilliantly because they're a really good linear feature, but they're normally surrounded by trees, so you normally don't see them until quite late or until there's a train on them. So I've got a train line showing up really nicely there, and it just goes to the bottom of the hill where that square shaped wood is, and I think I can also see, yep, I can also see a small river in there as well. So looking at the linear features I've got, so I've got a wood that's crossing my track that goes across the railway, so that shows up really nicely, and I think I need to be just to the right hand side of that, and then beyond that's a small level crossing I might see. But this, yeah, this big linear wood I've got going from left to right, I can see that there's a building just short of that, and I think I need to be going just down the right hand side. So you can see a track leading up to that building. That is the building on the map that you can see by that long thin wood that goes across the railway. So looking ahead now, I'm going to start to pick up my turning point area. I've got the big wood on the left hand side, and I know where I am in terms of going over this small linear wood that's directly below me. And then looking off to the right, I can just make out a pond in the woods off to the right hand side. So they're all features that I've got on the Ordnance Survey map. Looking ahead, I'm looking for the railway to go across my track and then parallel my track. So I'm going to fly towards that. You can always see a line of trees on the ridge line, casting some quite big shadows because the sun's quite low. So I'm going to be aiming just to the right hand side of those, and I should be over my target around about 7 minutes and 25. This is quite a good example actually of how you can have something on a map that looks quite distinctive, and when you get there there's a lot of other things on the ground that are quite confusing. So what looks like a big open space on the map is just lots of hedgerows. Now some of those hedgerows can hold, or hide rather, a whole range of different things that might show up on a map as a track or as a road, but in reality it's just a hedgerow between. Okay, so coming up towards 6 minutes now, I'm going to start to look ahead into my turning point area. Now I can see I've got the railway on the right. I'm looking for a line feature that comes from the railway up to some buildings, and then beyond that I'm looking for a river. So I can see the river crossing the railway. That's standing out quite nicely, so I know it's this side of that. So So I think it's that quite large collection of buildings with some trees just on the far side of it. I can see the track showing up nicely now, and then looking further to the left I can also see just the the village just going down our left hand side, so that's all looking good. I can now start to look at my exit features. On my map I can see two woods off on the right hand side, one behind the other. I'm going to be going for over the top of the first of those woods. Puts me roughly in the right direction, so I've got my exit heading sorted out. I can now start to focus and making sure I'm going to be definitely over this target, and as I get closer that does look more and more obvious that that's what we're looking for. You can see the road behind it, a large farm complex, and you can see the river, or the river valley bed at least, showing up. The river on the right hand side is quite obvious, behind it's a bit less so. Due to be here at 7 minutes 25. Okay, so coming around the corner for the next one then. So looking ahead I can see, so I've started the stopwatch. Now I can see the first of my woods. I've got a wood just slightly to the left of where I'm heading at the moment, and then another wood to the right hand side. So they're showing up quite nicely. And I've got a fork in the road off to the left hand side as well, so I'm content that that's where I'm heading for. And I'm just coming over the top of a road that goes from left to right with a distinctive bend beyond that, and some buildings. So I know exactly where I am and where I'm heading. So this is all the navigation I need for the moment. This is my initial heading sorted out. So I want to place myself just down the right hand side of this first wood, and then just down roughly the left hand side of the next wood. Although I do seem to have quite a bit of crosswind from the left, so that is continually pushing me to the right, so I've not taken enough drift into account. It's going to measure the distance. So I've got 4 kilometres between this turning point and the next one. Clock's already running, which is good. So the wind is from, well, it's not in our head, it's from behind, so we're doing at least 51, but we're mostly crosswind. So I'm going to estimate, and this will make easy sums actually, I'm going to estimate 60 kilometres an hour. So if you do the calculation, it's 4 divided by 60 times, 4 divided by 60 times 60, which funny old thing is 4. So if you're doing 60 kilometres an hour, you will do a kilometre a minute. 4 kilometres will take 4 minutes. So I'm expecting to be there at 4 minutes. I'm going to write that down on my map. Now looking for some navigation. So I've got, it's almost a ribbon of woods off to my right hand side, so I can see those. And just checking the map, if I'm over those woods, I'm slightly right of track, so I need to start coming back to the left now to try to collect the line between those two turning points. So I've drifted slightly off to the right hand side. So in terms of our things that we look for, we're looking for big, unique and directional features. These woods is a whole collection of small woods, but from it we can make out a big feature. Not particularly unique, you see a lot of woods around, particularly as we're looking at now, it's woods everywhere. In terms of being directional, so the big thing I'm looking for is I can now see this road that's crossing from left to right, and I can see where that goes through the woods. And then on the left hand side I've got a small diamond shaped wood, or triangular shaped wood rather, and then another wood on the far side of the road. I should be roughly over the top of there at the moment, with that V shape opening up directly behind me. So I'm going to slowly make my way back across, but that's roughly where I should be. It doesn't matter that I'm not there, it just matters that I know where I should be and that I'm going to compensate for it. So it's 3 minutes 20, so looking ahead now in towards the turning point. Now the big feature that's standing out for me, I've got a C-shaped wood, which is on my map. That's looking nice, looks a bit like a Pac-Man from here. And then just before that, and on the right hand side, I'm looking for a set of buildings, or a building. Could be a couple of smaller houses, and then just to confirm that's what I'm looking for, I've got a road in front of it, a road off to the left hand side, and then another road in front of that, so I can see all those features. The C-shaped wood looks really good, and there's this whole group of woods off to the right hand side, so I'm content that that's where it is. We're due to be here at 4 minutes, so we're running slightly late, but that means we're doing less than 60 kilometers an hour, so our estimation of our speed is wrong. But just a learning point for the future. But we're close enough, we're going to be there at about 4 minutes 30 maybe. Now my exit feature, I'm going to be looking right now and I can pick up a small square shaped wood and then a linear wood, and those are showing up quite nicely. So over the top of this turning point, 4 minutes and 40 seconds call it. So that's quite a discrepancy between what I thought my speed was going to be and what my speed actually is. And I flew a longer leg because I didn't fly particularly well. Okay, so stopwatch runs. We've got the wind behind us now. We're going to be doing 70 knots over the ground. Sorry, 70 kilometers an hour over the ground. I wish we could do 70 knots. Okay, so I can see a small wood that's directly in front of me now, and then a longer linear wood. So I'm going to base my navigation on that initially. This is quite a short leg looking at it. I'm just going to do a quick measurement. Okay, I've got 3 kilometers. So 3 kilometers, I've got all the wind behind me, so that gives me my maximum ground speed, which is 70 kilometers an hour. I'm just going to do a quick calculation. Okay, so that gives me 2.57, so let's call that 2 minutes 35. So I've got a road now going from left to right for nav features, always focus on navigation rather than timing. I've got a distinctive bend in the road between 2 building sets, so that's looking good. If anything, I'm very slightly right of track. I'm due to be at the turning point at 2 minutes 35, so looking ahead, got a very distinctive wood in the distance, and I can just about make out traffic on that big road. So the target area I'm looking for is short of that. And if I look off to my left, I can see a line of trees that are pointing towards the turning point. I can see those showing up quite nicely. So I think it's that square of wood with a huge shadow off to the right hand side. I think that is my turning point. And as I get closer, we'll see if we've got any other confirmatory features. I think that's pretty much all we need, to be honest. We've got, if you look at the wood in the distance, you'll see there's a very distinctive corner. As it goes around the corner, it goes down to the road. Our turning point is halfway along that and towards us this side of the road, so that is it. Due to be there at 2 minutes 35. And you can see just how much faster we're going now with the wind directly behind us. Made a huge difference. Okay, so coming into that is our final turning point, coming over the top of that at around about 2 minutes 22, so slightly early.
Well, the most important thing that we've learned is that you don't need to do all of your planning on the ground, and having skills like this allows you to go from one point to another point by replanning in the air. You need to know roughly what the wind direction is, although I think we can actually work it out if we really try. You need to know roughly what the wind direction is, what your heading is compared to that. Most importantly, are you directly into wind, directly downwind, crosswind, and what effect is that going to have? We've got some very simple calculations and maths that we can do. If you've got a calculator or a phone, that's fantastic. If you haven't, you can actually do quite a few of these in your head. When I get on the ground, we'll just do a little bit more ground school to take you through some of those calculations.
So let's look at those calculations. Before we go flying, we know what our wing speed is going to be. We know what the wind speed and direction is, and from that we can work out what our maximum and minimum ground speed is going to be. We can then, when we're in the air, estimate our ground speed depending on what our heading is relative to the wind. We know what the distance is, so then we can work out the time it's going to take us to get from one point to another. So the 60 element of the calculation is because time is in minutes, but ground speed is in kilometers per hour, so that converts a minute into an hour and vice versa. And then for the final A-level solution, if you wanted to do it, If you know what the distance is and you knew how long it took you to fly from one to another, you can work out your ground speed. Your ground speed in that circumstance is your distance divided by your time multiplied by 60. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm going to be making some more on navigation in the future, so if you like the video then please let me know, and if you don't like it please let me know in the comments, and importantly if you want to see the future productions then please subscribe.